You are listening to HOA Consequences. She said Tao on site, and she meant me. I am calling security right now. Virginia shoved a guest pass at my chest and screamed that it was invalid because it was not displayed at the exact angle she preferred. The pass was taped to the inside of my guest's windshield, perfectly visible, dated for today, filled out in block letters. She did not care. I work as a building inspector in Novi, Michigan, and I know the difference between code and nonsense. The Aspen Hollow Ridge Association had rules, sure, but Virginia Smith, the gate access administrator, had decided overnight that guest passes now needed to be angled precisely perpendicular to the dashboard, not taped to the glass. She sent no email. No notice. She just showed up at 7 in the morning with a clipboard, a stopwatch, and a vendetta. My brother-in-law was visiting from Ohio. He parked in the guest lot at 9 last night. By 7 this morning, Virginia had chalk-marked his front tire and stuck a bright orange windshield sticker on his driver's side window. The sticker said violation in bold letters, no details. I found out when he knocked on my door holding the sticker and asking if he was getting towed. I stepped outside in my blue polo and black trucker cap, still holding my coffee. Virginia was 3 cars down, marking another tire with the same orange chalk. I walked over. She saw me coming and smiled. "You will pay the fee, then you will pay the fee about the fee," she said, tapping her pen on the clipboard. I asked what fee. She said the guest pass was invalid. I said it was dated and visible. She said it was not displayed correctly. I asked where that rule was written. She said it was updated last night in the enforcement policy, and I should have checked the website before my guest arrived. My brother-in-law got here at 9 last night. The policy was not updated until 3 in the morning. I know because I checked the timestamp later. She did not care. She said the fee was $50 for the invalid pass, plus a $100 tow authorization fee if the car was not moved within 2 hours. I asked what a tow authorization fee was. She said it was the cost of processing the tow order. I said the car was not being towed. She said not yet. She slapped the clipboard on the hood of my brother-in-law's car and walked to the next vehicle. I followed. I asked if she sent any notice about the rule change. She said the website was notice. I said most people do not check an HOA website at 3 in the morning. She said that was not her problem. I pulled out my phone and opened the association website. The enforcement policy page had a new PDF posted at 3:14 in the morning. The update log showed Virginia Smith as the editor. I took a screenshot. She saw me do it and laughed. "You can screenshot all you want," she said. "I do not need your explanation. I need your payment." I stopped arguing and started collecting, because the end game was already set. I knew what I had to do. I walked back to my unit, grabbed my small measuring-free diagram packet, and tucked it under my arm. My brother-in-law asked if he should move the car. I said no. I said we were going to let this play out. Virginia returned an hour later with a tow truck. The truck was a white Ford with amber lights and a wheel lift in the back. The driver parked behind my brother-in-law's car and got out with a handheld scanner. Virginia stood beside him with her clipboard. I came outside again. She waved the bright orange tow authorization slip at me like it was proof. "Your guest has 2 minutes to move or the hook goes on," she said. The driver walked to the rear of the truck and started lowering the wheel lift. I asked Virginia if she followed the enforcement policy. She said yes. I asked if she issued a written warning first. She held up the orange sticker. I said the policy required a written warning with a 24-hour cure period before any tow authorization. She said the sticker was the warning. I said the sticker had no date, no cure period, and no signature. She said I could argue with a judge. I pulled out my phone and called the management company. They put me on hold. The tow driver hooked the lift under the front axle. My brother-in-law came outside. He asked if I wanted him to move it. I said, hold on. The management company picked up. I explained the situation. The rep said she would call Virginia. Virginia's phone rang. She ignored it. The driver started pulling the wheel lift control lever. I shouted for him to stop. He looked at Virginia. She nodded. He kept pulling. The front wheels lifted 6 inches off the pavement. I stepped in front of the truck. The driver stopped and said I needed to move. I said the tow was not authorized under the policy. He said he had a signed authorization from the gate administrator. I said the gate administrator skipped required steps. He said that was between me and the HOA. My phone buzzed. The management company rep said she left Virginia a voicemail and sent an email. I asked if she could call the tow company directly. She said she did not have their number. I asked if Virginia was authorized to issue tow orders without board approval. She said the board delegated enforcement to Virginia under the updated policy. I said the updated policy was posted at 3 a.m. She went quiet. Then she said she would escalate to the board president and call me back. The driver lowered the car back down. Virginia screamed at him. He said he needed confirmation from the management company before completing the tow. She said the authorization slip was confirmation. He said he was not risking a wrongful tow suit over a $50 fee. She called him a coward. He got back in the truck and said he would wait for the callback. Virginia turned to me and said, I just made everything worse. You will pay the towing fee, the invalid pass fee, and now an obstruction fee, she said. I asked what an obstruction fee was. She said it was for delaying the tow. I said that was not a real fee. She said it was in the updated policy. I pulled up the PDF on my phone and searched for obstruction. Nothing. I showed her. She said it was in the supplemental enforcement guidelines. I asked where those were. She said they were internal. I said internal rules were not enforceable without notice. She said she just gave me notice. The tow driver got a call. He talked for a minute, then got out and unhooked the wheel lift. He told Virginia the management company said to stand down pending board review. Virginia told him he was fired. He said he did not work for her. He drove away. Virginia stood in the empty parking spot and stared at me. This is not over, she said. She walked to her car, a silver sedan with an Aspen Hollow Ridge Association decal on the rear window. She got in and drove to the gate. I watched her stop at the guard shack and talk to the gate attendant. Then she drove out. My brother-in-law asked if it was safe to leave his car. I said no. I said we needed to move it to the street outside the gate until I figured out what was happening. We moved the car. I went back inside and opened my laptop. I pulled up the association bylaws, the CC&Rs, and the enforcement policy. I started taking notes. The enforcement policy required a written warning with a 24-hour cure period before any fine or tow. The warning had to include the specific rule violated, the deadline to cure, and the name of the issuing officer. The orange sticker had none of that. The updated policy Virginia posted at 3 a.m. added new requirements for guest pass display angles, but it did not change the warning procedure. She skipped the warning. She went straight to the tow. That was a violation of her own policy. I drafted an email to the management company and the board president. I attached the enforcement policy, the screenshot of the 3 a.m. update, and photos of the orange sticker with no date or signature. I explained that Virginia issued a tow order without following the required steps. I requested an immediate reversal of all fees and a formal review of her enforcement actions. I sent it. Then I called my contractor buddy, Mike, who had dealt with Virginia before on a job site access dispute. Mike picked up on the second ring. I told him what happened. He laughed. He said Virginia tried the same thing to him last year. She denied him a contractor access pass because his truck had a ladder rack, and the new vehicle guidelines said racks were not allowed in the guest lot. He fought it for 3 weeks. Finally, he threatened to file a complaint with the county licensing board for interference with permitted work. The HOA backed down. He said Virginia hates losing, and she never follows procedure. He said he would back me up if I needed a witness. I thanked him. Then I asked if he still had records from his fight. He said yes. I asked him to send me anything that showed Virginia skipping steps or making up rules. He said he would dig it up. If you are enjoying this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more HOA revenge tales where the rules get turned around. The management company called back an hour later. The rep said the board president reviewed my email and agreed that the tow order was premature. They were voiding the fees. I asked if they were addressing Virginia's pattern of skipping procedure. She said that was an internal personnel matter. I said Virginia changed the rules at 3 a.m. and targeted guests with no warning. She said the board would discuss it at the next meeting. I asked when that was. She said 2 weeks. I said, my brother-in-law was leaving tomorrow morning, and Virginia was still threatening his car. She said the fees were voided, so there was no threat. I said Virginia just tried to tow him anyway. She said she could not control what Virginia did on her own time. I hung up. I forwarded the email chain to Mike. He called me back 5 minutes later. He said I needed to file a formal complaint with the management company and copy the HOA insurance carrier. He said if Virginia was acting outside her authority and the board was not stopping her, the carrier needed to know, because they could be liable for harassment claims. He said he knew someone who did that in another community, and the carrier threatened to cancel the policy unless the board reined in the rogue enforcer. It worked. I drafted a complaint. I cited the enforcement policy, the skipped warning, the 3 a.m. rule change, and the unauthorized fees. I included photos, timestamps, and screenshots. I sent it to the management company and requested that they forward it to the insurance carrier. Then I copied Mike and asked him to add his own experience as a witness statement. He sent me a 2-page document with dates, photos, and email threads showing Virginia inventing vehicle guidelines and denying access without board approval. I attached it to my complaint and resent everything. That night, Virginia posted a new notice on the community board. It said all guest parking was now limited to 4 hours per day, effective immediately, and any vehicle exceeding the limit would be towed at owner expense. No board vote. No member input. Just Virginia, deciding on her own that she could change parking rules whenever she wanted. I took a screenshot. I checked the bylaws. Guest parking rules required a board vote and 30 days notice to members. Virginia had done neither. I added the screenshot to my complaint file and sent an update to the management company. No response. The next morning, my brother-in-law left. His car was parked on the street outside the gate. No issues. But 3 other residents in my building got orange stickers. All guest vehicles, all with the same violation stamp. and no details. I knocked on their doors and asked if they got warnings. None of them did. One of them, a nurse who worked night shifts, said her mom was visiting to watch her kids, and now she was facing a $200 tow threat. She was crying. She said she could not afford it, and she did not know the rules changed. I told her not to pay anything. I said the fees were not valid because Virginia was not following procedure. I gave her my number and said if anyone tried to tow her mom's car, call me immediately. She thanked me. Then she said she heard Virginia was targeting people who complained about the new rules. She said a guy in Building C got 3 stickers in 1 week after he emailed the board. I asked for his name. She gave it to me. I emailed him. He responded in 10 minutes. He said Virginia was using vague safety language in the violation notices, so neighbors assumed he was doing something dangerous. He said people stopped talking to him. He said he finally paid the fees just to make it stop, even though he did not think they were valid. He said he was planning to move out. I called Mike. I told him Virginia was ramping up. He said that was retaliation, and the insurance carrier needed to know immediately. He said if the board was not controlling her, the carrier would step in to avoid a lawsuit. I updated my complaint with the new stickers, the neighbor testimonies, and the safety language tactic. I sent it to the management company again and copied Mike. Still no response. 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from a collections agency. It said I owed $250 for guest parking violations, tow authorization fees, and obstruction fees. It said if I did not pay within 10 days, they would add interest and report it to the credit bureaus. The letter was signed by Virginia Smith, Gate Access Administrator, on behalf of Aspen Hollow Ridge Association. I called the management company immediately. The rep said she had no record of any collections referral. I read her the letter. She went quiet. Then she said Virginia was not authorized to send accounts to collections without board approval. I asked if the board approved it. She said she would check. She put me on hold for 10 minutes. When she came back, she said the board did not approve it, and they were contacting Virginia to retract the letter. I asked when I would get confirmation. She said within 48 hours. I said I wanted it in writing. She said she would email me. No email came. I sent a follow-up the next day. No response. I called again. Voicemail. I called the board president directly. Voicemail. I texted Mike. He said I needed to show up at the next board meeting with everything and force them to address it on the record. He said if they tried to ignore it, I should read my complaint out loud during the open comment period and make them respond in front of witnesses. The meeting was in 1 week. I prepared a 3-page statement. I printed copies of every document, the enforcement policy, the 3 in the morning update, the orange stickers, the collections letter, the neighbor testimonies, Mike's witness statement, and the insurance carrier complaint. I stapled them into packets. I made 10 copies. I was ready. The day before the meeting, Virginia showed up at my door. She was holding a clipboard and a handheld scanner. She said she was conducting a compliance audit, and she needed to inspect my vehicle registration and guest log. I asked what guest log. She said all residents were now required to maintain a written log of guest visits, including names, dates, and vehicle information. I asked when that rule started. She said last week. I asked where it was posted. She said it was in the Supplemental Enforcement Guidelines. I said those were not public. She said ignorance was not an excuse. I said I was not giving her anything. She said refusal to comply would result in a fine. I asked how much. She said $500. I asked what the fine was for. She said obstruction of an official audit. I said there was no such thing. She said it was in the guidelines. I said, show me. She said the guidelines were internal and confidential. I said then they were not enforceable. She said she would let the board decide that. She scanned my license plate with her handheld scanner. I asked what she was doing. She said logging my vehicle for the next enforcement cycle. I asked what that meant. She said vehicles that failed compliance audits were flagged for enhanced monitoring. I said I did not fail anything because I did not participate. She said refusal was failure. She walked away. I watched her go to the next unit and knock. The neighbor opened the door. Virginia started the same speech. The neighbor handed her a piece of paper. Virginia scanned his plate and left. I texted Mike and told him what happened. He said Virginia was making up rules faster than the board could track them. He said that was the point. If she created enough chaos, people would just pay to make it stop. He said the only way to beat it was to force the board to admit she was out of control. He said tomorrow's meeting was the moment. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the collections letter, the orange stickers, the guest log demand, and the way Virginia smiled when she scanned my plate. I got up at 2 in the morning and checked the association website. There was a new PDF, posted at 1:53 in the morning. It was titled Emergency Vehicle Safety Protocol. It said all vehicles parked in guest lots or on streets must display a valid fire lane clearance decal, effective immediately, or they would be subject to immediate tow. The decals cost $75 and had to be purchased from the gate office, Virginia's office. I took a screenshot. I checked the bylaws. There was no provision for emergency vehicle safety protocols. There was no mention of fire lane clearance decals. I searched the entire association code. Nothing. Virginia had invented a new revenue stream at 2 in the morning and posted it like it was law. I added it to my meeting packet. Then I sent an email to every resident in the community with the subject line, check the HOA website now. Virginia is charging for fake decals. By 6 in the morning, my inbox was flooded. Residents were furious. Some said they already paid for the decals because Virginia told them it was required by the fire marshal. I called the fire marshal's office. They said they had no record of any requirement and no involvement with Aspen Hollow Ridge Association. I recorded the call. I added it to my packet. The board meeting was at 7 that evening. I arrived at 6:30. The clubhouse meeting room was packed. 50 people, maybe more. Everyone had orange stickers, collections letters, or decal receipts. Mike was there. He gave me a nod. The board president, a retired lawyer named Ed, walked in and looked around. He looked pale. Virginia walked in behind him. She was smiling. Ed called the meeting to order. He said the agenda was posted and there was time for open comments at the end. Virginia raised her hand. Ed ignored her. She stood up anyway. She said she wanted to address the recent complaints about enforcement. Ed said that was not on the agenda. She said it was an emergency matter. Ed said it could wait. She sat down, still smiling. Ed went through the standard reports. Financials, landscaping, pool maintenance. Nobody cared. People were shifting in their seats, holding up stickers, whispering. Finally, Ed said it was time for open comments. 20 hands shot up. Ed pointed at me first. I stood up. I walked to the front and handed out my packets. I gave one to each board member, one to Mike, and I kept one for myself. Then, I read my statement. I went through every violation. The 3 in the morning rule changes, the skipped warnings, the unauthorized collections letter, the fake guest log requirement, the invented fire lane decal, and the insurance complaint I filed. I cited page numbers. I showed timestamps. I played the fire marshal recording on speaker. The room was silent. When I finished, I looked at Ed. I said Virginia was operating outside the enforcement policy and the board was letting it happen. I said if they did not stop her, the insurance carrier was going to cancel the policy and every board member would be personally liable for the harassment claims. Ed looked at Virginia. Virginia stood up. She said I was lying. She said every action she took was authorized under the updated enforcement policy. I said the policy required warnings and she skipped them. She said the warnings were posted on the website. I said posting at 3 a.m. was not notice. She said residents were responsible for checking the site daily. Someone in the back yelled, "That is insane." Virginia ignored them. She said if residents did not like the rules, they could move. Mike stood up. He said Virginia tried the same thing to him last year, and he had the documents to prove it. He walked to the front and handed Ed a folder. Inside was every email, photo, and notice from his access dispute. Ed opened it and started reading. His face went red. He looked at Virginia. He asked if she denied Mike access without board approval. She said it was a safety issue. Ed said there was no safety issue in the file. She said it was a judgment call. Ed said judgment calls required board review. She said she did not have time to wait for the board. Ed closed the folder. He said the board was going into executive session to discuss personnel matters. Virginia said that was not necessary. Ed said it was mandatory. He told everyone the meeting was recessed and they would reconvene in 30 minutes. The board members stood up and walked into a side office. Virginia stayed in her seat. She stared at me. I stared back. People started talking. The nurse from my building came up to me and said thank you. She said her mom left this morning and she never paid the fees. She said Virginia called her yesterday and threatened to send her to collections too. She said she was going to file her own complaint. 3 other residents asked me for copies of my packet. I told them I would email it. Mike walked over. He said I did good. He said the board looked scared, and that meant the insurance threat was working. He said if the carrier pulled the policy, the board would be uninsurable, and the community would collapse. He said they had no choice but to rein Virginia in. I said I hoped he was right. 30 minutes later, the board came back. Ed looked grim. He said the board reviewed the enforcement actions and determined that several procedures were not followed. He said all fees issued by Virginia in the past 60 days were voided. He said the collections letter was unauthorized and would be retracted. He said the fire lane decal requirement was not valid, and all purchased decals would be refunded. He said the guest log requirement was not enforceable, and residents could disregard it. Then he said the board was suspending Virginia's enforcement authority pending a full audit. He said she would remain as gate access administrator for routine tasks, but all violation notices and tow authorizations required board approval. Virginia stood up. She said that was unacceptable. Ed said the decision was final. She said she would sue. Ed said that was her right. She walked out. The room erupted in applause. Ed said the board would issue a formal notice to all residents within 48 hours with the corrected policies and a timeline for the audit. He said if anyone had additional complaints about Virginia's enforcement actions, they should submit them in writing to the management company. He said the meeting was adjourned. People swarmed the front table. Ed looked overwhelmed. I grabbed my packet and left. Mike followed me outside. He said I won. I said it felt like it. He said Virginia would not stop. He said she would find a way to retaliate. I said let her try. I had everything documented now. He said good. He said he would keep an eye out and let me know if he heard anything. I thanked him and drove home. 2 days later, the board sent the formal notice. All of Virginia's fees were voided. All unauthorized policies were rescinded. The enforcement policy was restored to the version before her 3 in the morning updates. Residents who paid for fake decals would receive refunds within 30 days. Virginia's authority was suspended. The notice said the board was hiring an independent auditor to review all enforcement actions from the past year. It said the results would be shared at the next meeting. I thought it was over. I was wrong. 3 days after the notice, I came home from work and found a bright orange sticker on my windshield. It said violation in bold letters, no details, no signature. I checked my parking. I was in my assigned spot. I checked my decals. Everything was valid. I checked the guest lot. No guests. I took a photo of the sticker and called the management company. The rep said Virginia's authority was suspended and she should not be issuing stickers. I said, clearly she was. The rep said she would notify the board. I said I wanted it in writing. She said she would email me. No email came. I peeled the sticker off and threw it away. The next morning there was another one. Same spot. Same sticker. No reason. I called the rep again. Voicemail. I called Ed. Voicemail. I texted Mike. He said Virginia was daring me to escalate. He said she wanted me to react so she could claim I was harassing her. He said ignore the stickers and keep documenting. I took another photo. I sent it to the management company, the board, and my complaint file. The stickers kept coming. One every morning for a week. My car. Same spot. Same sticker. No explanation. Other residents started getting them too. Random cars, random spots, no pattern. People were furious. The community board exploded with complaints. Someone started a petition to remove Virginia entirely. It got 60 signatures in 2 days. Then Virginia escalated. She hired a private tow company, not the same one from before, a new one. They showed up at 4 in the morning and hooked 3 cars from the guest lot. No warnings, no notices, just hooked and gone. The owners woke up to empty spots and had to call the tow yard to find their cars. The tow yard said the fees were $300 per car, plus storage, plus a release fee. Total, $450 each. I was one of the owners. I parked in the guest lot the night before because my assigned spot had a maintenance crew working on a water line. I got permission from the management company. I had the email. It did not matter. Virginia authorized the tow anyway. I found out at 6 in the morning when I went outside, and my car was gone. I called the tow yard. They said my car was there. I asked why. They said unauthorized parking. I asked who authorized the tow. They said Aspen Hollow Ridge Gate Administrator. I asked if they verified with the board. They said they did not need to. They had a signed tow authorization slip. I asked to see it. They said I could see it when I paid the fees and picked up my car. I called the management company. No answer. I called Ed. No answer. I called Mike. He was awake. He said this was a trap. He said Virginia wanted me to go to the tow yard, cause a scene, and give her an excuse to file a restraining order. He said stay calm, Document everything and let the board deal with it. I said the board was not dealing with anything. He said then we forced them to. I drove to the tow yard. It was a chain-link lot on the edge of town with a small office trailer and a guard dog in a pen. I walked into the office. A guy behind the counter asked if I was picking up. I said I wanted to see the authorization first. He pulled out a folder and showed me a bright orange slip with Virginia's signature. It said the car was parked in a fire lane. I said my car was not in a fire lane. He said that was what the slip said. I took a photo. He told me no photos. I said I already took it. He said I could leave or pay. I paid $450 on my credit card. The guy printed a receipt and gave me my keys. I walked to the lot and found my car. It had a new orange sticker on the windshield. I peeled it off. I took photos of the car, the lot, the office, and the guard dog. Then I drove to the management company office. The office was closed. It was 8 in the morning. The sign said they opened at 9. I sat in the parking lot and waited. At 9, the rep walked up. She saw me and stopped. I got out of my car. I said we needed to talk. She said she was not authorized to discuss ongoing disputes. I said my car was towed illegally and I wanted a refund. She said she would pass it along to the board. I said the board was not responding. She said she could not help me. She walked inside and locked the door. I called Mike. I told him what happened. He said it was time to go nuclear. He said file a formal complaint with the County Code Enforcement Office and the State Attorney General. He said if Virginia was taking kickbacks from the tow company, that was fraud. He said even if she was not, the unauthorized tows were harassment, and the board's failure to stop it was negligence. He said once the state got involved, the insurance carrier would pull the policy and the board would panic. I filed the complaints that afternoon. I attached everything: the enforcement policy, the suspension notice, the tow receipts, the orange stickers, the 3 in the morning updates, the fake decals, the collections letter, and the fire marshal recording. I included a timeline. I included witness statements from Mike and the nurse. I sent it certified mail. Then I posted a summary on the community board and tagged every resident who signed the petition. The next morning, I got a call from the board's attorney. He said the board was aware of my complaints and they were taking them seriously. He said they were conducting an internal investigation. I said the internal investigation was not working because Virginia was still towing cars. He said the board suspended her enforcement authority. I said she was ignoring the suspension. He said that was a separate issue. I asked what that meant. He said if Virginia was acting outside her authority, the board was not liable. I said the board hired her and failed to supervise her. He went quiet. Then he said he would relay my concerns to the board. He hung up. 2 days later, the insurance carrier called the board. I know because Ed called me 10 minutes later. He said the carrier was threatening to cancel the policy unless the board took immediate action to stop the harassment complaints. He said the carrier reviewed my complaint and determined that Virginia's actions created a liability risk. He said the board was terminating Virginia's contract effective immediately. He said all pending fees were voided and residents who paid for tows or decals would receive full refunds within 60 days. He said the board was hiring a new enforcement coordinator who would follow the policy exactly as written. I asked if Virginia was banned from the property. Ed said she was still a resident, but she was barred from any official capacity. I asked if she could still issue stickers or call tow trucks. He said no. I asked what would happen if she did. He said the board would file a restraining order and pursue legal action. I said good. He thanked me for bringing the issues to their attention. I said he should have addressed them before it got this far. He said he agreed. We hung up. The board sent a notice that afternoon. Virginia Smith's contract was terminated. All enforcement actions taken after her suspension were unauthorized and void. Refunds would be processed. A new coordinator would start next month. In the meantime, enforcement was on hold except for emergency safety issues, which required board approval. The notice included an apology to residents for the confusion and disruption. It was signed by all 5 board members. I forwarded the notice to Mike. He called me back laughing. He said we did it. He said Virginia was done. I said I hoped so. He said the best part was the insurance angle. He said boards hated insurance problems because it meant personal liability. He said once the carrier threatened to pull the policy, the board had no choice but to act. I said I wished they acted sooner. He said better late than never. That weekend, I saw Virginia at the grocery store. She was in the parking lot near the entrance, talking to someone in a car. I parked 3 spots away. I got out and walked toward the store. She saw me. She walked over. I kept walking. She got in front of me. I stopped. "You think you won," she said. I did not say anything. She pulled out her phone. She said she was recording. She said she wanted me on the record admitting I filed false complaints to harass her. I said my complaints were factual and documented. She said I cost her job. I said she cost herself her job by ignoring the rules. She said the rules were garbage and someone needed to enforce real standards. I said real standards required warnings and due process. She said due process was a waste of time. She waved her phone at me. She said I was on camera refusing to engage with her concerns. I said I had no obligation to engage. She said I was afraid of the truth. I said the truth was in the documents I filed with the county and the state. She went quiet. Then she said those complaints would go nowhere because I had no proof of fraud. I said I had proof of harassment, unauthorized fees, and policy violations. I said that was enough. She lowered her phone. She said the board was going to regret siding with me. She said she had her own attorney and she was filing a defamation suit. I said good luck with that. She said I would be hearing from her lawyer. I said I looked forward to it. I walked past her into the store. She stayed in the parking lot. I could see her through the window, pacing and talking on her phone. Inside, I grabbed a cart and started shopping. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mike. He said he just heard from a friend on the board. The independent auditor finished the review. Virginia issued over 200 violations in the past year. 140 of them had no valid basis. 83 skipped the required warning step. 52 involved fees that were not in the policy. The auditor recommended refunding every fee and banning Virginia from any enforcement role in any HOA in the county. The board was voting on the recommendation at an emergency meeting tonight. I texted back and asked if I should come. Mike said no need. He said the vote was a formality. The board had no choice. The insurance carrier was watching. I said good. He said he would let me know how it went. I finished shopping and walked back to my car. Virginia was gone. I loaded my groceries and drove home. When I got there, I saw a notice taped to my door. It was from the board. It said the emergency meeting was at 8 and all residents were invited. I checked the time. 7:30. I grabbed my jacket and drove to the clubhouse. The meeting room was packed again, even more people than last time. Mike was there. He waved me over. I sat next to him. Ed walked in with the other board members. They all looked exhausted. Ed called the meeting to order. He said the agenda was posted, and the only item was the auditor's report. He asked the auditor, a woman in a gray suit, to present. She stood up and summarized the findings. 204 violations issued by Virginia Smith in 12 months. 143 without valid basis. 87 without required warnings. 61 with fees not authorized by the policy. 32 involving threats or coercion. 18 involving unauthorized tow orders. Total fees collected, $41,000. Total refunds owed, $38,000. She recommended full refunds, policy revision, mandatory training for all enforcement staff, and a permanent ban on Virginia Smith holding any enforcement authority in Aspen Hollow Ridge Association or any affiliated community. The room was silent. Ed thanked her. He asked for a motion. A board member moved to accept the recommendations. Another seconded. Ed called for a vote. 5 ayes. No nays. The motion passed. Ed said the refunds would be processed within 90 days. He said the revised enforcement policy would be posted within 30 days and would include mandatory warnings, clear fee schedules, and board oversight for all tow orders. He said Virginia Smith was formally banned from enforcement roles, and her actions were being referred to the state attorney general for review. People started clapping. Someone shouted, "Finally." Ed said the board took full responsibility for not acting sooner. He said they underestimated the scope of the problem. He said moving forward, all enforcement actions would require board review, and residents would have a formal appeal process. He said the goal was transparency and fairness. He said the board appreciated the residents who came forward with complaints and evidence. He looked at me. I nodded. The meeting adjourned. People swarmed the front table again. Mike and I walked outside. He said it was a clean sweep. I said it felt good. He said Virginia's defamation threat was dead now. He said once the state reviewed the auditor's report, she would be lucky to avoid criminal charges. I said I was not holding my breath. He said fair enough. He said either way, she was done at Aspen Hollow Ridge. We stood in the parking lot for a while. The air was cool. The overcast sky was starting to clear. I thanked Mike for backing me up. He said it was nothing. He said he hated bullies and Virginia was the worst kind. I said agreed. He said if I ever needed a witness again, call him. I said I hoped I would not need one. He laughed. He said in an HOA, you always need a witness. We shook hands and left. The next week, I got a check in the mail. $450, the tow refund. 2 days later, another check. $75, the fake decal refund. The week after that, the board sent a final notice. All Virginia Smith fees were refunded. The enforcement policy was revised. The new coordinator started Monday. Residents with concerns could schedule meetings during posted office hours. Tow orders required written board approval. Guest parking limits were removed. Fire lane decals were discontinued. I filed the checks and the notice. I sent copies to Mike, the county, and the state. Then I went back to work. My night shifts felt easier. No more orange stickers. No more surprise fees. No more Virginia standing in the parking lot with a clipboard and a smirk. But the story was not over yet. 3 weeks later, Mike called me. He said Virginia filed her defamation suit. She named me, the board, and the management company. She claimed I organized a harassment campaign to destroy her reputation and cost her income. She wanted $200,000 in damages. Mike said it was a frivolous suit and it would get tossed. I said I hope so. He said either way, the board's attorney would handle it because I was acting as a resident, addressing legitimate complaints. I said good. The suit dragged for 2 months. Depositions, document requests, motions. The board's attorney was efficient. He submitted the auditor's report, the enforcement policy, my original complaints, the insurance carrier correspondence, and testimony from a dozen residents. Virginia's attorney tried to argue that the complaints were exaggerated and motivated by personal animosity. The judge asked if Virginia disputed the 204 violations. She said the violations were valid under her interpretation of the rules. The judge asked if her interpretation included skipping the warning requirement. She said warnings were discretionary. The judge asked where the policy said that. She could not answer. The judge dismissed the suit with prejudice. He said Virginia's actions were clearly outside the enforcement policy, and the complaints were protected resident speech. He said if Virginia wanted to challenge the auditor's findings, she could file an appeal with the state, but she could not sue residents for reporting violations. He awarded attorney fees to the defendants. Virginia's attorney asked for a stay. The judge denied it. The case was over. Mike called me 10 minutes after the ruling. He was laughing. He said Virginia had to pay $30,000 in attorney fees. He said her own attorney dropped her after the ruling. He said she was facing a state investigation and a potential criminal referral for fraud. He said it was the best outcome possible. I said it felt surreal. He said enjoy it. He said wins like this did not come often. That night, I got a text from the nurse in my building. She said her mom was visiting again and there were no issues, no stickers, no fees, no threats. She said thank you. I said it was a group effort. She said no, it was me. She said I stood up when no one else would. I said Mike helped. She said sure, but I started it. I said I just wanted to park my car without getting harassed. She said that was enough. The next board meeting was quiet. Routine business. Landscaping budget. Pool reopening date. New coordinator introduction. The new coordinator was a retired school administrator named Linda. She explained the revised enforcement policy. She said warnings were mandatory. She said fees were capped and itemized. She said tow orders required written board approval with photos and a 24-hour notice. She said residents could appeal any violation within 10 days. She said her office hours were posted and she welcomed feedback. People clapped. It felt normal. After the meeting, Ed pulled me aside. He said the board wanted to thank me formally. He said my complaints saved the association from a major liability. He said the insurance carrier confirmed they would have canceled the policy if the board had not acted. He said that would have been a disaster. I said I was glad it worked out. He said he was sorry it took so long. I said better late than never. He smiled. He said if I ever wanted to run for the board, I had his vote. I said no thanks. He laughed. He said he understood. I walked to my car. The parking lot was empty. The overcast sky was gone. The stars were out. I got in and sat for a minute. My phone buzzed. It was Mike. He said the state closed the investigation. No criminal charges. But Virginia was banned from holding any HOA enforcement position in Michigan for 5 years. He said it was in the state registry. He said she was done. I texted back, "Good." He sent a thumbs up. I drove home. My assigned spot was open. No stickers. No chalk marks. No threats. I parked and walked inside. I made coffee. I sat on my couch. I opened my laptop and checked the association website. The enforcement policy was updated. The meeting minutes were posted. The auditor's report was public. Everything was documented. Everything was clean. The orange stickers were gone. The fake fees were gone. Virginia was gone. The board was paying my filing fees to end the fight. Virginia's complaint was ruled unfounded with evidence cited. A complaint to the management company had triggered discipline. The whole thing felt like a fever dream. But it was real. And it was over. I leaned back and closed my eyes. I thought about the tow yard gate rattling, the grocery store lot confrontation, the board meeting applause, and the judge's gavel. I thought about Mike showing up every time I needed him. I thought about the nurse thanking me. I thought about the new coordinator explaining the policy like it mattered. It did matter. Rules only worked if people followed them. And if they did not, someone had to push back. The next morning, I woke up to a clear sky. I made breakfast. I checked my phone. No emails from the board. No texts from Mike. No notices on my door. Just a normal day. I went to work. I inspected a foundation pour. I signed off on a framing plan. I ate lunch in my truck. I drove home. I parked in my spot. No stickers. The following week, the board held a special election. 3 seats were up. Virginia ran. She lost. She got 12 votes out of 300. The winners were a teacher, an engineer, and a retired cop. All 3 campaigned on transparency and accountability. The vote was not close. Virginia did not show up to the results meeting. Someone said she moved out. Someone else said she was just lying low. I did not care. She was not my problem anymore. The community settled into a new rhythm. The new coordinator issued warnings. Residents fixed violations. Fees were rare and reasonable. Tow orders stopped. Guest parking was easy. The orange stickers disappeared. People stopped checking the website at 3 in the morning. The fear was gone. Mike and I stayed in touch. He sent me a photo of his truck parked in the guest lot with no sticker. He said it felt weird. I said I knew what he meant. He said we should grab a beer sometime. I said sure. We never did. Life got busy. But it was good to know he was there. A few months later, I got a letter from the state attorney general. It said the investigation into Virginia Smith was closed. No criminal charges, but a formal reprimand and a 5-year ban from HOA enforcement roles. The letter thanked me for my complaint and said it helped identify systemic issues in HOA governance. It said the state was considering new regulations to prevent similar abuses. I filed the letter. I did not frame it. It was just paperwork. But it felt like closure. The community moved on. New residents moved in. They had no idea about Virginia or the towing wars or the orange stickers. They just saw a normal HOA with normal rules. That was fine. I did not need them to know. I knew. Mike knew. The nurse knew. The board knew. That was enough. One night, I was walking to my car after work. It was late. The parking lot was quiet. I saw someone standing near the guest lot. My stomach tightened. I walked closer. It was Linda, the new coordinator. She was checking a guest pass. She saw me and waved. I waved back. She walked over. She said she was doing a routine check. I asked if there were any issues. She said no. She said the guest had a valid pass and everything was fine. She said she'd just like to do a walkthrough once a week to make sure people knew she was available. I said that sounded smart. She said it kept things calm. I agreed. We talked for a minute. Then she left. I got in my car and drove home. That moment stuck with me. It was simple. It was boring. It was exactly what enforcement should be. No drama, no threats, no power trips. Just someone doing their job and treating people with respect. It felt like a small miracle. But it was not a miracle. It was just what happened when the rules were followed and the right person was in charge. The towing wars were over. The orange stickers were gone. Virginia was banned. The board was paying the costs. The fees were refunded. The policy was fixed. The insurance stayed. The community was calm. I could park my car without fear. I could have guests without stress. I could go to work without wondering if I would come home to an empty spot and a $450 bill. It was not a huge victory. It was not a lawsuit that made the news. It was not a viral story. It was just a guy who read the rules, collected evidence, and refused to back down. It was just a contractor who showed up as a witness. It was just a board that finally did the right thing when the pressure got too high. It was just an insurance carrier that cared about liability. It was just a system that worked, barely, after being pushed to the edge. But it worked. And that mattered. Because HOAs run on fear. They run on the idea that you cannot fight back. They run on the assumption that you will pay the fee, accept the sticker, and stay quiet. Virginia understood that. She weaponized it. She used vague rules, midnight updates, and fake fees to create chaos. She knew most people would just pay to make it stop. And she was right. Most people did. But not everyone. And that was enough. The last time I saw Virginia was at the grocery store again. She was loading bags into her car. I was walking to mine. We made eye contact. She looked away. I kept walking. No words, no confrontation. Just two people in a parking lot going about their day. It felt anticlimactic. But that was fine. The real ending was not a dramatic showdown. It was the absence of drama. It was parking my car and walking inside without checking for stickers. It was getting mail without bracing for a collections letter. It was living in my own home without someone inventing rules to harass me. That was the win. Not the board meeting applause, not the judge's ruling, not the refund checks. Just the quiet, boring normalcy of a functional HOA that followed its own rules. It should not have been rare. It should not have been hard. But it was. And I was glad I fought for it. I still live in Aspen Hollow Ridge. The new coordinator is doing fine. The board is stable. The rules are clear. Mike still parks in the guest lot when he visits. The nurse's mom comes by every few months. No one talks about Virginia anymore. New residents do not know the name. Old residents prefer to forget. That is how it should be. Sometimes I think about the tow yard gate rattling, the grocery store parking lot confrontation, where Virginia tried to shame me and strangers started filming, and the moment I handed Ed my complaint packet in front of 50 witnesses. I think about the insurance carrier threatening to cancel and the board finally acting. I think about the auditor's report and the 204 violations. I think about Virginia's phone dying mid-rant and her freezing in place, silent for the first time. I think about the karma of it all, the way her own rules ate her alive. But mostly, I just think about parking my car. Catch you in the next one, and I will be back soon with another story.